Hey, this is Jeff Hittner, and welcome to the Ambitious Dads podcast. Today, I have a very special guest and a dear friend. His name is Robert Mulhall. Robert and I have known each other for a while. Actually, we were introduced maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And Robert, I don't want to take any of the pleasure away from introducing you, so I'll let you introduce yourself. So, want to give us a little bit about your background and fatherhood and that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. And I just realizing we met 13 years ago in a month. 13 years in a month down by when I moved to New York City. Yeah, down by the East River when you were putting on that event.
Oh, that's right.
That had special prizes. Okay, so born and raised in Ireland. Grew up in a really sort of different and interesting family, very spiritually based family. So that's been a big part of my foundation in my life. And I have a beautiful 7.5. The half is very important. 7.5-year-old son, and who I co-parent with his mom. And I've been doing that for about 4 years now. And I'm the CEO of Kripalu, which is the largest retreat center in the Western world. Retreat center for all things spiritual, yoga, meditation, shamanism, grief work, relationship work, trauma work, you name it.
Fatherhood work?
Fatherhood work, parenting, all of that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And in my abundant spare time, I spend a lot of time in my own sort of shamanic practices and ceremony, and then anything outdoors in nature.
Yeah. Awesome. So many good things, because, one of the things that Ambitious Dads is trying to focus on is what it's like to try to be a leader at work and at home. And obviously in the role that you play, you will wear that hat in both instances. Does it feel like that's something that's integrated for you? And if it is now, has it always been that way? Or is it something you've had to practice? What is it like to be that kind of dad and that kind of executive?
Yeah. And so, give you a sense of the scale. Kripalu's 350 employees. It's a nonprofit. It's $32 million nonprofit. It's we serve about 50,000 people a year. So it's a big, big operation. And so it takes a lot of attention and energy and focus. And just like a 7.5-year-old does. And a few years ago, we're up in Western Massachusetts. So we get deep winters. And a few years ago, I was with my son solo, and I think there was a snow day for his school. And I just looked at my calendar, and the snow days, they give you about 7 minutes notice that it's a snow. Yeah. What? Who's making these decisions? So I look at my work calendar, and it's just brutal. It's a day of like back to back to back to back. And I was like, okay, we got to figure this out. And I'm trying to hold this balance of fulfill my responsibilities as CEO and do all of the meetings, try to be a good present dad, and try not to just default to screens. And that day was beyond hard. It was just beyond hard. I stayed at home. I worked from home, and I tried to keep him entertained, sort of off screen. And it was just painful, beyond painful. And I remember he had gone to bed, and I remember sitting there, and I was so beaten up by that day. Pretty sure I cried. And I just said, I'm never doing that again. And then a month later, true to form with the good New England weather, plenty more snow came, and I got an opportunity to practice that. And I just looked at my calendar and I said, okay, cancel everything that's not totally critical that has to happen that day. And there was probably 2 that were like external meetings with people that has taken a long time to set up. And I said, this is going to be another 6 months. So I'm keeping these ones. Everything else does not matter today. And just communicated with everybody that I'm basically offline. If there's an emergency, text me. Otherwise, forget it. And myself and my son had a great day, just sort of dropping in together and playing and, being outside and all of that. And then there's been other times where I'm like, I look at the calendar and the day is full of non-negotiable, non-movable meetings. And then I go, okay, the screen rule's out the window. And he gets a day of screens, or he gets half a day of screens, or whatever it is. And a lot of that has been about a practice of being really graceful with myself and holding like principles, but not holding them as absolutes, like absolute rules. That's where all the stress comes for me. When I hold any parenting thing as an absolute rule and just holding it more as principles that are situational and that I have to be highly flexible with them. And as long as I'm being flexible with them, I actually feel softer inside of my own body. And then when I'm softer in my body, I'm softer with my child and in my communication with him and all of that. And I just, I release a lot of the sense of pressure of having to do it all. So that's like a little example of how I'm sort of trying to integrate balance at all. And another one, just this week, for some reason, he's become a prolific colorer this week. He's just coloring everything.
Walls?
Yeah, and thankfully not, but it's all hung up. You see behind me, there's lots of stuff, but in his bedroom as well. And, we're getting ready for school. We're about to get out the door, basically on time. I've got the 17 backpacks wrapped around me to get into the car. And he goes, Dad, can we color? I'm like, in what world does that seem like a great decision to you? This is what I'm like, what? Where does this come from? And then I just went, screw it. Yeah, let's color. And we just dropped everything. We spent 5 minutes coloring and that was it. And we got to school and we weren't late. So we were fine.
What was the shift inside you when that happened? Because I've noticed that from time to time where we've got a plan, and if I just listened the way you did to yourself, like it would have just been a 5-minute detour and would have kept like just the energy and everyone like perfect and happy. But instead I defaulted to like the rational, like, no, we're literally on our way into the car. Like we're not going to do this other thing right now.
Yeah. I definitely hold a philosophy of what is minimum stress in all of these situations. So what would minimize stress in these situations? Sometimes that's get down on the floor and color for 5 minutes. But I think in this situation, it was just like the plan that I have doesn't matter. Like it's actually not more important than coloring. Like I could go in front of a judge and argue that coloring for 5 minutes is equally as valuable as being in school on time or, being at the front of the car line or whatever the hell. I was like, great. I like his just because he's 7 doesn't mean he's not as reasonable as me. Doesn't mean he's always as reasonable as me and doesn't always as reasonable as him. But, we had this beautiful exchange a few years ago. He was probably 5 and all of these exchanges happen at, 6 a.m. And
as they should.
Yeah. And he said something, I did something, or I said something or whatever. And he just goes, that's not fair. And as a kid, he's pretty interested in fairness at this stage. And he says, that's not fair. I said, okay. I said, well, fairness isn't the orienting principle of our household. He's like, so he says, well, what is? I said, what do you think it should be? And he thought for a moment and then he said, love should be. And I went, that's right. Love is the orienting principle of this household and fairness is on the list. And, that's deep wisdom coming from at that point, 5-year-old.
I think it's deep wisdom coming from you as well. I think that's one of the things that we talk about in the Founding Fathers program that we run is this fatherhood philosophy. I mean, that is a philosophy. That is the way decisions are prioritized in the house, and it orients your child as well, right? It can end an argument before it starts, and to be able to be centered around that, it's really awesome. So that's very cool. What how you've sort of explained how you're not so hard on yourself, when you experience the snow emergencies. But like, how else, you talk about you cried when you didn't feel like you did it right at the end of the first snow day, but how else do you process like the your own inconsistency? I feel it when you explain that, like, we want to be great dads, and like we have this impossible set of choices sometimes, and we have to sacrifice on both ends, and so we don't feel great about either. And then for me, I want to talk about it, and there's not always someone to do that with. Like, what do you do to kind of process that?
Uh, I'd just say that I decide once I've made the decision, I just feel great about it. I try not to, like, if I'm deciding between whether he's on a screen or not on a screen, or whether I'm doing the meeting or not, I feel good about, once I decide the thing, I feel good about it. I don't really hang out in the, oh, I wish he'd watched less screens today or whatever. It's like, can't change that. Moving on. That's good. If that's what got us through the day, him being happy, me being happy, both of our nervous systems being regulated is way more important than some rule about anything else.
I discovered something interesting when I took the boys to New York the other week, and it's the only time where they're allowed to watch unlimited TV is on the plane ride. Yeah. And I never thought it was possible, but I saturated them the whole week after, the 8-hour flight from Europe to New York. They didn't ask for TV one time. Yeah. I thought to myself, oh, that's interesting. So another way to look at it too, it's like, if you have those days where you just have to stick them in front of the TV, maybe we should overdo it, and then they won't even ask for it for a while.
Yeah.
Really interesting. There's something else that you've mentioned to me in your fatherhood that I'm curious about. And you talk about, and I'm going to butcher it, but like, you want your son to connect to his wild side. Can you talk a little bit about that? What does that mean?
Yeah, I will. I want to fully answer your other question though. So, like, how do I process things? Two ways. One is when myself and Elijah have had a hard interaction. I will often not like process fully with him, but I'll give you an example. Again, it was a plan. His mom was coming to pick him up. Usually what we do is we try to tidy up the house, because I let it go to sort of a little bit of chaos. And then we just do one big sort of tidy up at the end. I don't want to spend my entire life tidying up. So, and I'm happy with that decision.
No judgment here.
Yeah, we do a big sweep on Saturday afternoon, and it only takes us 15 minutes. It's great. And we do it together. It's good. So we're doing it, but he's getting super distracted. He wants to show me all of these things. And I'm like, I'm watching the clock. There's no time. He's got one shoe on, all this stuff. And I can feel my stress rising, which can turn into like sharpness and frustration. And he's getting frustrated because he just wants me to like look at the thing or whatever it is. And it boils over. He gets really upset. I get upset with him. And my tone, like the tone is very like, still very quiet, but there's a sharpness to it. Mm. And he gets upset by that. And thankfully in the moment I caught it and sort of get down, down on my knees, and we hug, and I'm just like, I'm really sorry, buddy. You don't deserve to be talked like that, like that. No matter what's going on, you don't deserve to be, nobody should talk to you in a sort of a sharp way. And we hugged it out, probably abandoned half of the tidying up, and he went off to his mom. And I I can feel the tenderness of it right now. I really struggled with that moment, with how I had spoken to him. And it wasn't anything too dramatic, but I just knew it wasn't kind. And
And was at the end of your time with him for the
yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to see him for another half a week. We do sort of a half week on, half week off. And uh, he goes with his mom. I go into the kitchen and like I have a proper sob. Like, and it's, it's that, but it's more than that. There's always lots going on in life. So it's just a big emotional release. And then I texted his mom and said, hey, if you're still in the area, can you bring Elijah back? And it happened to be perfect because he had forgotten some toy that he wanted anyway. So they were coming back. So good divine timing. He comes in, he goes, hey, Dad. He's like bouncing around as if nothing's ever happened. And I just pulled him over and I said, hey, buddy, how you doing? And he was just like, I'm great. Just need to get my toy. And he got his toy. And I just said, I just want to tell you that again, that I'm just like, I really want you to know that it's not okay for anybody to talk to you like that. And it's not okay for me to talk to you like that. And I'm really sorry. And what was going on was I really wanted everything tidied up on time. And I was getting stressed by that. And my stress showed up as frustration. And I pointed that at you, and that's not okay. And I'm really, really sorry. And he was lovely, and we had a kiss and a hug, and that was it. But sometimes actually not processing with him, but really owning my stuff with him.
Preparing. Yeah.
Preparing. But also just naming all of what, like explaining to him what was going on for me internally, kind of locating my emotional state. That feels like a really healthy way for me and him to engage with each other, and to model something for him as a man. And then the other way I do it is like friends and therapists and all that kind of stuff. But often I'll try to find a little bit of time, sometimes in my car when I'm waiting to pick him up or something like that. And I'll sit in my car, close my eyes, put my hand on my chest where my sort of emotional heart is. And I'll just tell myself that I'm doing a great job as a dad over and over again. So you are doing a great job. You are doing a really good job. You're a really good dad. You're a really good dad. Because there's nobody telling you that, pretty much. Like every now and then you get a little piece of it, but it's great when other people say it. But when I say it to myself, it touches something much deeper.
That is really profound. I want to pick on a couple of things. One, that you are explaining to him like kind of the higher level and more profound emotions that he experiences through you, so that he can learn to put words to them, is pretty awesome and powerful, and the type of modern fatherhood that I think we all want to get to. And then that piece about saying that you're a great dad, that is true. I don't know what the experience is like for moms, but it is, it is really hard to get those compliments sometimes. And so it's powerful to say that to ourselves. I will say that my oldest, who's just a little bit older than yours, right? He's 8, and he likes to write. He writes these little sweet notes to me, and I hold on to those things like, they're the greatest love letters I've ever written. And when I feel like a shitty dad, I pull those things back out. In fact, I carry it with my laptop, this one that he wrote me. It's really meaningful to hear that. It's absolutely so important. And that's the confidence gap, by the way, that I've found a lot of is as men, more than any generation before, 92% of us identify first as fathers. Like it's the core aspect of our identity. If we are fathers that we identify with, and only about a third of us think we're doing a good job at it when surveyed, which means, 2/3 of us are walking around with this like deep feeling of insecurity around how we father. And so even being kind to ourselves the way you talked about it is really important. Really appreciate you saying that.
Wildness.
Yes. Wildness. Tell us about that.
So, I'm Irish. We are inherently wild as a people. We're Celtic among other things, and there's just a wildness in our bones and in our blood. And my son is born in America, Turtle Island, and where there's just a really different kind of energy. There's some wildness in America for sure, but there's not a lot of wildness in the Northeast in its kind of persona. And I think nowadays parenting really looks at safety, and it looks at kind of, if a child is starting to have a big emotional experience, a lot of it is tamp it down. Like, just, you're okay. It's just a lot of keep everything sort of boxed and pretty, even though there's a lot of emotional intelligence flowing through parenting now, much more, I think, than previous generations. I remember reading some article, and they were like, try not to say to your child, be careful, when they're like on the swings or on the playground or whatever. It's like, be careful, because you don't want to raise a careful child. It's like, be mindful. It's like, hey, buddy, are you paying attention to where your foot is? Or, hey, are you want to raise a mindful child, not a careful child. And that really struck me. And I was like, yeah, I want to raise a mindful child. And then I think it's Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed. I can't remember. I think it's Untamed, Glennon Doyle's book. I might be one of the only guys that's ever read it, but she talks about she's with her daughter, and they're at some like zoo safari thing with the cheetah, and they bring the cheetah out to run and to like see how fast it'll run or whatever. And then the cheetah runs and sort of does the show for everybody. And then they bring the cheetah and they sort of put it back out into the whatever savanna, fenced savanna that they have for the cheetah. And the daughter says something like, look, he's turned wild again. And Glennon Doyle, who I think is the author of this book, says, oh, how am I stopping my child from being wild? Because we're animals. Like, we think we're not. We think we're humans, which is not animal, but we're animals. And I want my son to know that he's an animal. I want him to be able to be in connection with his animal instincts, whether that's passion or creativity or bravery or strength or like intelligence that comes beyond the thinking mind. Like, animals have this incredible intelligence that, humans discount because it's not we can't write about it in the same way. And we can't scientifically prove it in the same way. But we as animals, I believe, have all of that sort of instinct and that intelligence as well. And I want my son to have access to all of that intelligence, not just sort of the intelligence of the thinking mind. And so my spirituality has a lot of kind of, wildness in it through its ceremony and shamanism. And so he gently engages with some of those things in his own way. He has some interest in those things.
So do you like put him on the roof and say, have at it, or what do you do?
Buddy, jump. It's coming up a lot with, he wanted to get a toy gun. And I said, no, we're not going to get a toy gun. I said, but I'll get you a shield and sword. So I got him a wooden shield and sword. And I said, I got myself one as well. And we've done quite a lot of this. I said, let's learn I'm going to teach you how to defend yourself. And I'm going to teach you how to attack. And so I will like back him into a corner with my sort of shield and sword. And then we'll pause. I say, what are you feeling? And he'd be like, I'm afraid. I'm like, yeah, just notice that. I go, and what do you want to do? And he goes, I want to stop. I said, yeah, notice that too. I said, but what if you could still feel fear, want to stop and not stop? Like, what would that look like? And he says, well, I'd probably try to hit you with my sword. I said, go. Okay. I said, now what I don't want you to just do it once to like get me away from you. I want you to learn how to dominate me. So now like come at me with the sword and move me all the way back so that I'm in a corner. And so then he'll do that, and I'll sort of obviously give him the space to do that and let him do that. And so we're playing with space, we're playing with emotions, we're playing with domination and submission, all in this like just little fun game of swords and shields. But it's helping him become aware of things like fear, but then also helping him see that he has as much, if not more, courage than any fear that he has in the moment. And I think that's most of life. Is, I have more courage than I have fear. But we get stuck when we think that fear has won the chess game. And it's just like, there's always more courage. And can we tap into that, and can I help my kid tap into that at a young age?
I really love that. I think it manifests in our house with wrestling. We do a lot of wrestling on the bed.
Yeah.
I'm always the nervous one. So if you stopped and asked how we felt, I'd be like, I'm afraid that I'm going to accidentally throw you off the bed, or someone's head's going to hit a corner. But I recognize, and there's a lot of research too on, ironically, the research shows that it's really good before bedtime.
Mm-hmm.
It actually calms their nervous system a lot.
Yeah.
Really enjoy hearing this idea of like stopping and asking them to connect with the emotions that they're feeling. This, again, another powerful way for us to raise emotionally aware children. And so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I remember as a kid, I played a lot of sports, and at a certain point, kids got bigger, and puberty and all those things. So fear kicked in for me, right? Fear of physical pain and being playing rugby or soccer, whatever, kicked in for me. And years later, I spoke to my dad about it, and he said he knew that I had fear, but he never talked to me about it. I never remember it in this conversation. It didn't seem to be a recollection for either of us. And that was definitely something I wish he had tended to for me. And I can see, everybody's got fear, and I can see my son. There's other boys that are much braver with their bodies. Some of them will just like literally run into walls, and it doesn't seem to, that's sort of like what they love to do. My son's not like that at this point. He's more sort of calculated in the risks that he takes. And I can see him becoming braver with his body. And so I don't want fear to hold him back. And he can then choose whether he plays sports or whatever. But I just don't want fear to hold him back.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So, all of this sounds very intentional. It sounds, if I had to summarize who I think you are as a father, you're a very intentional dad. Where are you struggling the most at the moment in fatherhood? I mean, the fun thing about being a dad, or the hardest thing about being a dad, is they're always changing, right? So, what are you struggling with the most right now?
Struggling with. Nothing feels like a struggle, but the thing that is newly emerging that I'm quite found my feet with is he's expressing more dissatisfaction with life, with whatever work plans for the day, whatever it is. And there's a sort of a sense of, it sounds like he's not grateful. And it sounds like he's a little entitled. And, as an Irish person, when you start to sound entitled, it's like not good. And, I grew up literally, you don't finish your dinner, there are starving children in the continent of Africa that, would be begging for your food. And I'm trying to figure out the balance between helping him express himself and his dissatisfaction without becoming a glass half empty kid, and without becoming an ungrateful kid and becoming an entitled kid. And there's a lot of that in American culture, and westernized sort of culture for kids. And I don't want that for him, but I also don't want that for me. I don't want to have to hang out with that for half a week. I'm with him half the week. I don't want to hang out with an ungrateful, entitled kid. Now, he's not an ungrateful, entitled kid. He's an unbelievably great kid. But there are flashes of that sort of archetype at this moment. And so I'm just watching it and I'm trying to go, okay. So I'm trying like different things. I'm like talking to him about it. And then sometimes there's more leading into consequences and so just playing with that. But that's an area that I don't feel like I've dialed in as well as some other parts of parenting. And just on the consequences thing, I introduced consequences a couple of years ago, and but that he could choose. I would ultimately pick the consequence, but he could give me options for consequences. So he had some agency in it. And it was hilarious. At the beginning, he was like, take all my toys away for a month. I was like, dear Lord, that's such an extreme consequence. I was like, how about this toy for 2 days? And, but having him be involved in the consequences conversation has been really helpful because he owns it then, or it's like co-owned. But I'm wondering, are we getting to a place where that co-ownership of consequences may not be as useful, and it may have to just be a little bit more, this is what dad says. And then that brought up this whole thing around the other day. I was very upset because it was my birthday actually a couple of weeks ago. And I said, for my birthday, we're doing everything I want to do. We never do everything I want to do for my birthday. We're just doing everything I want to do. And he's like, what the hell? That's not fair. I want to do it. I said, it's my birthday. This is for today. And your birthday, we can probably do most of the things you want to do, but I still get a veto. And he said, you're not the boss of me.
I hear that one a lot.
Yeah. And he said it a lot. And it got to the point where I was like, this is my birthday. Like, I'm just shutting this down. I said, I am the boss of you today. And he was like, that's not fair, blah, blah, whatever. And I think like somebody called me for my birthday to actually wish me happy birthday. And then after the phone call, he and I sat down and chatted, and I said, look, I just want to be really clear. I'm not the boss of you. Nobody is the boss of you. Nobody is ever going to be the boss of you. Even if they say it, they're not the boss of you. Don't let anybody ever be the boss of you. And I'm your dad, and I'm responsible for certain things. And some of those things you're not even tracking. I'm aware of them. You're not even aware of them. And because of that, I will definitely be making decisions for us. But it's not because I'm the boss of you. And he was good with that. We had a beautiful birthday from me. We did pretty much all the things I wanted to do, but he added some suggestions, which we went with as well, which is great.
Very interesting. The entitled part for me, what I get is everything is a big deal, right? So there's nothing that's a small deal. So I don't know if it's exactly the same, but can't find the one Beyblade, which is the toy that he loves right now, our oldest, and it's a meltdown for 5 minutes. And if I ask them, is this a big deal? His response is yes, it's a big deal. So the creating perspective is a equal. I think that might be the broader word for both of ours. It's like creating a little perspective is a challenge. And I notice it's not, I think whenever I'm worried about that sort of thing, like, man, he is like overreacting to, not being able to find this or can't do that. I just remind myself in his best moments that there's none of it. Right. Like I don't see that at all. I see gratitude, which I'm sure you see as well.
Sure.
And that's built into some of the ritual and ceremony we have around our religious practices too. There's moments where we talk about the things that we want to apologize for, and we have a gratitude tree in our house. So in order to remember to do gratitudes every evening at dinner, I bought like one of these wallpaper stencils. That's a tree that we call the gratitude tree, and the boys write down what they're grateful for the day, and we stick it on the gratitude tree. And my youngest is 5, so I'm doing the writing for him. And it usually, sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's serious. Like my 5-year-old will often say he's grateful for pooping. Right. Hey, I mean, it's the idea.
Some people that's their prayer for the day is that they have one bowel movement. So yeah.
So it all works out, but I really hear you on that one.
Yeah.
Um,
And I just wonder on the, parenting is so adult centric.
mm,
Like even what you said there about like shifting the perspective of it's not a big deal. From our perspective as adults, as the parents, it's not a big deal. From their perspective, it is a big deal. They're totally in proportion to how important this is to them. And that's the part I'm like, oh, how do we create space for that? And for me, then that's all about me. All of my like trying to get him to calm down, get my son to calm down, is because I can't handle it. Not because I think he's doing anything wrong.
Yeah, for sure. It's my trigger. Your trigger. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying not to get my nervous system into dysregulation. But I'm sort of like caging him in that process. Yeah, that's another area of like that I'm really always looking at is what does it look like to just let him be him and have much more of my attention actually be on me rather than on him.
That's an interesting. So, I mean, I have 2 boys running around the house together, right? So if I just let them be them, there's a little Lord of the Flies thing that might happen. So there's a little bit of it forces me to be the one, to use your words, like I am the boss of you in this moment, right? Like you cannot hit your brother or this sort of thing. But I also really appreciate, like, I think it would go a long way when it's punishment time for because the fights 99.9% of the time are around toys, like, and so asking the one that couldn't, keep their emotions together to pick a punishment for themselves around that toy would be very interesting. I'll see how that plays out. I'll talk about it.
And then as parents, what are our consequences for not keeping our emotions together?
Guilt.
No, we got you got to take away the Apple Watch or the glass of wine or like, we get those consequences in our other relationships potentially, right? If somebody says, "Hey, I don't want to be your friend anymore, or I need to take space, or I don't want to go on a second date with you, or an employer doesn't like you, whatever it is." But our kids don't get to give us consequences for when we effectively have our grown-up version of a tantrum, which is just emotional dysregulation, right?
My son definitely tries when I'm telling him, like, you cannot talk back to me. His response is, "You're talking back to me right now."
Yeah.
And then I'm like left in this like vicious circle where I'm like, what is my response to this? Like, I'm your dad. I'm allowed to have a bit more serious voice when you say that. And then, oh yeah, but
because I'm physically bigger and financially sort of and legally responsible for you, so therefore I have power over you. And you're like, you really start to dig into it. It's not the healthiest dynamic sometimes.
If they were that sufficient, I think that's why it gets more complicated when they're teenagers. When they're younger, I don't know how they internalize it. Maybe they do.
I think that's why they're saying you're not the boss of me, because they are internalizing it. I think that, like, I remember being a kid going, why are these people in charge of me? Like, these people do not have it figured out.
I think it's because also, where they really feel like they're not the boss of themselves is at school.
Yeah.
And they are a lot more controlled in that environment. And when they come home, there's a release valve that is often needed for sure.
And a therapist once said to me, he says, take it as a compliment that if your child is willing to be dysregulated around you, that's the greatest compliment, because it means they feel so safe to do that.
Sure.
I was like, oh, that actually means I'm doing something right. Every time my child becomes dysregulated, at some level, I'm doing something right because he's so safe with me that he's willing to do that.
That is an interesting way to spin when we are becoming dysregulated because we can't stop their dysregulation. We just say, this is good. I'm doing something right. This is good. I'm doing something right.
He's so safe. He's so safe with me that he's willing.
So safe. He can throw a glass on the ground. Look at that.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm looking to end our conversation today with a funny story, and I've been asking folks to give me their fecal story. So, do you have a funny poop story, or any bodily fluid, or anything that would just, as a dad, like before you became a dad, you were like, that is so gross, and I am not getting involved in this. And then after becoming a dad, you're like, yeah, like of course I'm dealing with this right now.
I don't think I was sort of squeamish in that way, or avoidant in that way. I've done a lot of different kind of volunteering with people that are, in hospice and stuff like that. So I've sort of seen it all. Yeah, so I don't know if I've got a funny story around any of those things, but Elijah definitely loves to show me his poops. He's like, Dad, come check out this one. You're like, good job, buddy. It's a 2-footer, whatever it is. Wonder no wonder your belly is hurting you. Yeah, so there's lots of that still going on.
That's hilarious because my son, so my 5-year-old, he's potty trained. He won't wipe his own bum. And it's the opposite reason. Not only does he not want to look at his poops, he thinks they are so gross. When I asked him literally last week, I was like, I think it's about time you start to wipe for yourself. And he goes, no, poop is too disgusting. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder when we're outgrowing this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Or where, when and how he internalized that. Where did that come in? Was it I remember reading an article about try not to have a disgust reaction to your young child and their nappy diaper changing, because they will feel the disgust and the rejection. I was like, wow, I don't know what's true about that, but I stayed with it. So every time I changed Elijah's diaper, I was just like, no matter what, just calm. No matter what, calm. It was just like,
but you weren't like, oh, roses.
No, it wasn't roses, but I wasn't going, oh my God, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people later in life grown-ups have a lot of, this shows up in like sex positivity and stuff like this, and a lot of shame and disgust around different parts of their bodies and their asses and all this kind of stuff. And I think a lot of that stuff starts pretty young.
You heard it here first. Awesome. Robert, thank you so much for being so honest about your experiences as a dad. And I really took away a lot that I'm going to, in particular, focus on around like just saying those emotions out loud a lot more, not just what I'm feeling, but what they're feeling, and asking them to check in with that. So really appreciate those thoughts.
Yeah, such a pleasure. I love the work you're doing, Jeff.
Thanks, Robert. All right, more soon. Bye, everybody.